Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Bank TV. Tonight we have some very special guests from an organisation that's been around for many, many years that not too many of us know about, but believe me, a lot of people have passed through. So let me first of all introduce to you my co-host for this evening is Peter de Groot. How are you, Peter?
Good evening, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And these are two people that we've been aching to get on Bank TV for some time.
Absolutely looking forward to tonight.
We have Greer to my left, your right, and also Sally. Greer is the president of the Seahorse Club, and that's the group that we're actually talking about tonight, of course, the Seahorse Club, the fabulous work that they've done, and also a little bit of the history of Seahorse. So, Greer, I think this is probably where I'll ask you. Seahorse has been in operation now for something like 35 years?
Yeah, so it's 36 going to our 37th year, and it's started off as a club meeting in people's homes back in 1975, and of course then cross-dressing, as it's generally referred to, was very much an illegal activity to be identified dressing in clothing of the opposite gender. So it was very brave of people to publicly come out, and I must admit I first became aware of Seahorse through an article in, I think it might have been the Herald.
Wow.
Tucked away in a small corner about it, and from there it's grown, and it was very active and had a lot of members, particularly going up into the late 90s when the anti-discrimination laws were changed in 2000, which then made it much easier to start coming out in the public and going to venues such as pubs and nightclubs and so on and so forth. And it's through Seahorse members from the earlier eras who were very brave to take on that political challenge, as it were, to encourage politicians to think of us as human beings rather than just freaks, and actively develop policies which created the anti-discrimination or changed the anti-discrimination laws, and in a potted history, somewhat ironically, because it's now easy to get out, membership of Seahorse slowly dwindled over the years to where it's a viable club, but we concentrate mainly now on people who are coming out for the first time and taking that very serious personal challenge of what happens. I don't know anyone, and
a little bit of hand holding and things like that. Because I used to be lighting dyke at Trish's, that's an admission, and Trish told me that you could actually dress up in drag, that was sort of okay to a point, but if you were wearing female underpants, that's where the trouble really started. So you could be in drag, I'm not going to ask you what sort of undies you're wearing today, but you could dress in drag basically, but not wear women's undies. Yeah.
Well, from what I understood, as long as you had some male clothing on you for the male to female cross-dresser transgendered individuals, that then there was some element of your clothing that was male, therefore you weren't fully dressed in the opposite gender. So, yeah, there is some sort of perverse logic to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was going to ask, Greer, how long have you been involved with Seahorse then?
I came out in the Seahorse in 2002, early 2002, and that was really my first public outing outside the confines of wherever I was staying at the time, and became quite actively involved when I realised that it's learning to be about yourself, and regardless of whether you wish to live full-time or just every so often be able to express the female side of your personality. And so I've had a previous stint as president, and a few years ago now I took it on again to provide an impetus, because we didn't really have a lot of people who were confident to take it on again. And I thought, well, now I've got much a higher profile than I used to have, that it was probably more apt that somebody such as myself sort of put my hand up to be the front person, as it were, for the club, and give others the opportunity to come out and sort of keep the club rolling on, because there is an element of history to keep Seahorse going, but it provides a very valuable service, as I was just saying to Lindsay, that there are those individuals who are still desperate to come out, who've never been out apart from, you know, in the confines of their home, and there's still the family stigma and all that goes with it, and the bottling up over the years, and they need somewhere to be able to safely come out and realise that there are people who don't necessarily have a clinical view of the world, but just we are human beings, and that's what we encourage people to be, just themselves.
How does Seahorse give you a positive self-image?
Well, it's really just putting you into a social environment that allows you to realise that, oh, we're just ordinary individuals, and as you see, you know, on our show here now, and also just in broad general life, that there are different body shapes, there are different, you know, people look differently, and be aware that there's not this magical sort of transformation, you know, that you really are just finally expressing yourself, and that you know, how you look is how you look, and learning to become comfortable with that.
Because that's one of the things that, from being, you know, hanging out in the gay scene for so long, is that, you know, drag queens seem to follow a look. You know, there's the Lady Gaga look out there and the Beyonce or whatever, whereas the women from Seahorse, we call you women, that's okay, seem to have developed their own style, or seem to understand a lot more about themselves, or that feminine side, and the confidence to wear or be who they are, rather than follow what the masses are doing.
I think in the simple sort of term, the drag queen is really a performance, and as such, there is an exaggeration of the look. So you're highlighting maybe your eyes, or, you know, the real theatrical style clothing that goes well on a stage under lighting, whereas most of us just want to be ourselves in an ordinary everyday situation. So we try and dress as nicely as we can afford, and we go from there.
Beautiful. And one of the things too, Sally, is like you've only, you know, you have sort of come out over the last 2 years. When you first went to Seahorse, what was your experience when you were confronted with people who were like you?
First nerves. Then once you walk through the door and realise that, hey, they can be dressed as badly as I am, you start to relax, make good friends, and you just find that you're comfortable with who you are, comfortable with the surroundings, comfortable with the people you're with. And it just basically works. You relax, become natural to what you are.
Because the support system's there. And one of the things that we must do too is Seahorse identifies. Tell us about how you identify in the community. Like you're definitely not drag queens because you're not in the gay scene or theatrical or anything like that. Although you probably do, you know, theatre in your part time.
I think in relatively recent years of Seahorse's history, and I'd class the last 10 years in that, is that Seahorse in a sense lost its identity by withdrawing into the background a little bit, because there was a period in the 90s when we had a very high profile club president and a few members who appeared on the ABC show Something in the Air, and when they had a situation like that, so, and had articles in the Women's Weekly, so there were high profile people or girls who really had the image of Seahorse there. When you lose people who are confident to get out into the front of the public, Seahorse sort of withdrew into the background a little bit as a safe haven, and because of the nature of being, in a sense, the first step of coming out.
Well, Lindsay and Greer, that's been very interesting. We're going to take a short break here on Ben TV, so let's see some messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to Bent TV, and you're here with myself, Peter, Lindsay, and we're also here with Greer and Sally from Seahorse Victoria, and we're learning all things about Seahorse and also things about Sally and Greer. Now, Sally, tell me a little bit about your journey as part of Seahorse.
I rang Seahorse May sometime 2009. Was in a very dark place, needed to get myself out of the hole that I was in, so I rang them up, made an appointment, sort of an appointment, to meet at DT's hotel. Went there, fully dressed, straight through the doors of DT for my first time ever out of the house. Met some wonderful girls, Greer one of them, had a great night, and haven't stopped then since, I guess. Just evolved and became who I am. I was always Sally, but I've become the person who's game to come out, sit in front of television cameras now, I suppose, and not worry too much.
Because, Sally, one of the things that you just mentioned is that it was your first time out. So before that, obviously you were dressing, and you're in, you know, obviously in touch with who you are as a human being. It must be absolutely diabolically heartbreaking to know that you are confined in this one area and not be able to be who you are or who you know you are.
It's extremely hard. I started dressing at age 4, that I can remember, right through teens, adolescence, 2 marriages which failed because of it, but that's another story. Sitting in a rented house in the middle of nowhere in a strange town, totally at a loss, thinking, why am I doing this, where am I? I knew I was not alone, but I didn't know who to contact, and I remembered Seahorse. So I came out to them. So it was good.
Amazing.
I was going to say that it's great to hear that you've got a lot better positive self-image about yourself now. And how has that affected the rest of your life?
It's been good. I'm much happier within myself. Conveniently, I work as a boy. The rest of my life, I live this as this. I go out of it weekday, weeknight, day, night, doesn't worry me. So I'm happy with myself, happy in myself.
So you've made friends through Seahorse?
Lots of good friends. Greer, I think, come down to class #1 good friend.
Oh, they're like a couple of friends to talk about, really.
We really are.
I have been out for dinner with these girls, and honestly, you know.
I've put Lindsay and you both as good friends now through DT's hotel. Other girlfriends, we meet at restaurants around town quite often, go out for meals. So it's just it's a good community feel and good community spirit.
I must say, the first memory I really have of Sally was at our annual general meeting when I became president for the first time in the second stint. And Sally came up to me afterwards and says, "What can I do?" And I said, "Oh, I've got a few things," and we talked about it. And then suddenly Sally was organising our 35th birthday dinner and having to then contact organisations. And so I think that was a shock to her own system, but it was also a turning point, I think, as well.
A good growing experience.
It was. I was only out for 4 months, and here I was making phone calls and emails as Sally, and all of a sudden I got people calling me Sally, emailing Sally, and I'm thinking, hey, this is me. And it was really good.
So I have to ask, when you actually come out, there would be just as big as an adjustment period coming out as there would be the day, you know, when you start dressing from a very young age, which is a theme. You know, even with gay people, we know that we're gay or we're different when we're very, very young. So
there is the element of, and there is degree of intensity, I think, too, because there's a lot of the transgendered people who, right from the various earliest, adamant they're in the wrong body, and people such as myself who know that there's earliest memories have this idea that I am slightly different, but at the same time I grew up to be a very athletic person. I was very fit as a teenager and went on, got married, had a family, but all the way in the background's bubbling this situation where you don't know how to handle it and you're hiding it because you know that other people think, oh, this is not normal, and you know it puts enormous strain on both yourself and your family, and it really is difficult.
So when you first came to Seahorse, how long had you been dressing privately?
30 years.
30 years, my God, the bravery. When you first came to Seahorse, what was was your experience like Sally's? Or
well, it was. I used the expression when I got to the venue, and I'd had 4.5 hour drive. I was working country Victoria, 4.5 hour drive to get to Melbourne, and rent a motel room and get changed and go out to the venue. And I walked around and looked through the glass door, and I thought, there are people in there as badly dressed as I am.
Oh, no.
And that was strangely comforting, because it made me realise that I'm not alone. You know, I can see people who basically look like me, and that was really comforting. And then it was just slowly developed from there.
Because I always remember that amazing scene in Glen or Glenda, which I think everybody has seen, and Glen is just standing in the window and admiring this fuzzy wuzzy cardigan. I don't know if you've seen the movie at all. It's a must see.
A long time ago.
Yeah, and I actually bought a coffee for like $2.99 at you know, and I was like, oh no. But the thing is, and in many ways, that movie, when you think about it, is really quite correct in the way that you know, there's this man who is cross-dressing and he's just looking at this fuzzy-wuzzy cardigan. And then when his girlfriend has it, he's having orgasms over it. And I remember another friend of mine who would dress up, you know, occasionally as a woman, and he said it's about the feel of the clothing. Once you have the feel of the clothing, like, you have all these thoughts in your head anyway, but once you actually start doing it, even that is a release.
There is the sense of, because you're bottling it up for so long, you have the personal tension, and then suddenly when you do get the opportunity to dress, whether it's in your bedroom or house, there's a sort of sense of relief. And so clothing does play an important part, because it adds to your self-image. And I think sometimes, depending on how screwed up you might be, because I think screwed up sometimes is an appropriate word for a lot of us, that you tend to focus on the relief aspect of it.
So you said screwed up, like, we don't see you as being screwed up, and we'll probably come back to that after the break, but we sort of see all this as being really natural. You know what I mean? Like, whether we're used to it or not. Anyway, that's what we'll be embarking on when we come back from the break. Please support our sponsors, because they're supporting us. See you shortly. Welcome back, everybody, to Bent TV on your community station, Channel 31. And tonight we're talking with Greer and Sally and my co-host Peter Groot about all things Seahorse. Before we went to the break, we're actually sort of asking about this impression, or this pressure that you're feeling about being, you know, what was the word you used? Like, it's...
Well, you're not really normal.
Not normal, whereas our communities think, oh, you know, bugger it, you're just another human being. That would have to be a pressure that comes from out, like, the broader community, or as it is written somewhere.
Well, I think the underlying thing from, as you say, your community, the underlying feelings are much the same, and that is that because we're a very small percentage of the population in a real sense, that a lot of us have never met another transgendered person, and we've only read about it, and the internet has allowed that to come. But one of the myths, I think, around it was that, you know, it's a learnt thing. You know, somebody must have taught you, well, God made you do it, or didn't make you do it.
The
whatever.
devil's sitting right here.
That's right. So, but really, it's just part of the human condition. You know, there is evidence that it stems from a biological nature. And, you know, exact technical details I'm not really au fait with, but there is some evidence that it could be the amount of estrogen flowing through at a critical time of the development of the fetus. And of course, that would imply that there's variations within a theme, as the degree of intensity I spoke about earlier. And so finally coming out and meeting others, realise that it's, you know, it is part of the human condition, and that, you know, as you just rightly said, we're normal human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask you, Greer, what type of stereotypes do you come up against?
Well, there's individuals I've met over the years have been sort of thought of being freaks, pedophiles, or some other deviant, and really it's not the case. I think obviously within any population group you'll get all sorts of variation of people, those that are axe murderers and those that aren't. It doesn't matter what your background is. But the general perception is that because you're doing something that appears to be normal and has been legislated against for many years, that you must be a deviant of some sort. And now that the world is starting to be more open about who you are and realise that it's nothing to do with sexuality or anything, it's really to do with your identity, and what other preferences you have are just the same as every other individual in the world.
I have to ask, have you ever had any women come along who enjoy wearing men's clothing to a Seahorse meeting? Has that ever happened? Because they don't have to be out there.
Very rarely.
Very rarely, so it has happened.
It has in the past.
Really?
Because Seahorse is a transgender group, and its constitution allows for both male to female and female to male. But it predominantly is a male to female transgender group, and I presume therefore people sort of perceive it to be only that.
Yeah.
And
but you have an open door policy, like if I turned up in, wide fronts and a suit or something like that, you'd say, yeah, come on in.
Yes. Yeah. But it's not. The Seahorse is not designed as a pickup place. It's designed purely to allow you to be comfortable with yourself.
Social and support.
Yeah. So you must have had some funny experiences though throughout all this, like a bra strap breaking it in an inopportune moment, or.
Fortunately, in that side, I've been very, very fortunate. I'm a member of Toastmasters, which is something that's been very, very good for me, and also the other people who just realise that I contribute what I contribute as a person, not who I look like. And I do a lot of judging at competitions, and I had put my name down for competition and judging, and the person organising rang me up and said, yeah, righto, I'm available. When I turned up, he got a big surprise because he had said to one of the other judges, "Oh, Greer, I rang up and I got this bloke on the phone."
Oh, no.
And the other judge said, "You obviously haven't met Greer yet." But he was fine with it, but it just took him by surprise.
So you find that people are more accepting, or?
Very accepting.
Yeah.
Young males in groups aren't.
No?
They're the funny ones. Greer and I were standing outside a shopping centre one Sunday night at closing. Group of 5 or 6 young guys walked past and said, there's some trannies, to use one of our pet words. I just turned to Greer and said, where are they? Things like that, you cop that a fair bit. I copped at a restaurant a few months back. A group of guys on their way out of the place looked at us, said, good evening, ladies. So I just, calm as be, said, thank you for the right pronouns, and kept going with what we were doing. So took the wind out of them.
Now, Sally, we're about to have to wrap up here tonight. Can you please give us some contact details for Seahorse Victoria?
Yes, Seahorse have got a website which is seahorsevic.com.au. Can leave on the contact page information and we will get back to you. We are on Facebook as Seahorse Victoria, or if you are in Gippsland, Seahorse Gippsland. If you want to leave a message for us by the old-fashioned written system, Post Office Box 86 St Kilda 3182, or we have a mobile phone number for ringing and texting any hour, 0401 455 198.
Well, Greer and Sally, thank you very much for joining us from here on Ben TV, and we wish all the best to Seahorse and your organisation. Lindsay, thank you as always for being with me on Ben TV.
We've learned a little bit tonight.
We have learned a lot tonight.
Absolutely, and I hope that the viewers out there too that perhaps need the group feel a little bit more comfortable about going along.
Well, we're signing off here tonight. Watch us again next week here on Ben TV. Thank you.